Welcome to the third episode and also the last episode of our roundtables. Today is Fashion Revolution Day. It's a day that reminds us of the catastrophe that took place 2013 in Bangladesh, when the factory Rana Plaza collapsed and killed 1,134 people. I think we are all the same opinion that something has to change, and that's why we're here. Today we want to transform our visions into a mission. I'm really happy about our special guest today, Lisa Jaspers. Thank you that you're here. I'm really excited what we can learn from you. You're the founder of Volksdays, and you also were the initiator of the German campaign, Fair by Law, that had an impressive impact on Germany's first supply chain law. So perhaps you could briefly describe what you did.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I started my own business 10 years ago, actually in 2013 as well. So we work with craftspeople from the Global South, and we are trying to, transform or think about value chains differently than maybe a lot of other companies do. And so I was sitting in a lot of panel discussions about, how can we change the way we consume? How can we change the way that in the textile industry things are being produced? And I think at a certain point I felt like we are always having the same discussions about, shitty businesses and shitty consumers. And at one point, also being a political scientist, I realized, there is a systemic level to it that we never address, which is politics, right? Because like in supply chains, we talk about human rights, we talk about labor rights, we talk about people not getting hurt. So I was really confused why that was never an issue, because us in Germany, we discuss human rights all the time, right? And we also, think it's very important that there are laws in place that safeguard us. And so I researched a little bit and I came up with a bunch of NGOs that already worked in regards to that. The Green Party in Germany already had pushed for this topic, and it was basically a supply chain law which makes company responsible for what happens in their value chain, even if those value chains aren't in Europe, which, often is the case. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Why is nobody talking about it? And so Fair by Law was actually the aim of bringing this into public more than, of course, we also wanted to push politics, but to change the narrative about, where do we look for the solutions? And I think a lot of people in Germany were not aware of the fact that companies are not responsible for their value chains. I noticed that a lot of people just thought, of course, somehow, you have to take care of that, and it's not the case. So it was really the aim of making this a discourse and changing the way that the public thought about it. So I kicked it off I think 4 years ago or something, and it was a super in the middle of the night idea, and then we put it into place in 4 days, and we kicked it off on the 24th of April, and it was the 5-year anniversary of Rana Plaza, and just by the next week we had already like 30,000 people who had signed the petition. So I started a petition, and then it just kept coming in, and so after I think a couple of months we had 100,000 people who had signed this petition, and so I got together with a lot of other NGOs which already had pushed this topic. I wanted to have them on board at the beginning, but they had a separate campaign, Initiative für Lieferkettengesetz, but we work really closely, we coordinate, we try to share all the information we get, and so our campaign is more from the perspective of end consumers, but also businesses that are pushing this law and have been pushing this law, because as we all know, it was put into place 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago, and is actually now in action since this year. So I would say we maybe created a little bit of awareness around this issue, which probably most parties try to push under the carpet a little bit, because it sounds very technical. If you say Lieferkettengesetz, everybody falls asleep. So giving it also a name that actually shows what it is, like Fair by Law, was really what we try to do.
Thank you. I would like to explain what we were discussing in the last roundtable, and we were talking about chances for changes. And one of the first one, which Kalpona is really passionate about, is that the education for consumers must be way stronger, that the consumers put a lot of pressure on the brands to change something. Another one was that we need mandatory government regulations, that fits to that. The next chance was about that, or the opportunity that workers can sue brands in the global north for what they're doing in the global south. Olga was proposing a fund that the brands have to pay in for, and from this fund, because the topic is about a lot around water, so it's a bit more focus on that, that they finance the ETPs for the factories because they can't fund it on their own. So there must be like this bigger fund of brands who pay the bill. And another idea was also regulations for influencers, because we were asking ourselves, why can fast fashion brands can get so big, and we thought that influencers are a big part of the problem, like in terms of that they're not regulated, like for example Shane halls and stuff like this. So that were the ideas, and I would love to discuss them here again. Then with your expert knowledge about like the political way, if somebody wants to comment on that right now, or you have your first idea on this, just start.
Well, I have some ideas too.
Yeah, great. Tell us.
Can I share them?
It was also. I mean, you briefly described what you did with the petition, and also that there's this law now. But where are the boundaries? Are you like, what did challenge you a lot? Where were problems?
So first of all, I really like the ideas, and I think a lot of ideas that I have also go into that direction. But I think, I think the supply chain law, the tricky part about it is that people now believe that the problem is solved, and it's not. You know, this is like the bare minimum. You know, it's basically not making sure that people don't die anymore. You know, so I think we need a very vivid discourse about other solutions, and this is what is necessary. So I think one thing that would be very easy for governments is to make like fast fashion companies responsible of taking care of the costs that are created by all the waste that is created through them, right? I mean, the amount of clothing that is thrown away is immense, and usually we pay for it as taxpayers because we pay the companies that take care of the trash. So really kind of seeing, and I think this water fund goes in a very similar direction, like externalities, like negative impact on the environment is now kind of outsourced to nature or to government services in Germany, but why not the ones that actually create the pollution? Why don't they have to pay for it? So I think this makes a lot of sense to me, because it's an unfair competition. That they don't have to pay these costs. But I also think that, I mean, I've been in the fair trade world for the last 10 years, and from my perspective, I think it's very important that we start having more honest conversations in the fair trade scene as well, because even in the fair trade world, most value chains or supply chains still work in a way that most profits are being generated in the global north and not in the global south. We pay premium, but that doesn't change anything. So really having a very honest discourse about, this is the that comes from colonialization. It's within the capitalistic system that this will never change. So we have to think about, how can we address that? How can we discuss it? And how can we find honest conversations around this? Because if we don't, then we're just trying to, we try to put a Band-Aid on a broken leg, but it's not going to help. And I think having a more systemic approach to, we're not, we are talking about exploitation of people and nature. Water is a perfect example. And in my opinion, we have to stop, just focusing on small, quick fixes. And I think we have to be more political and more systemic around it, because I don't think that there will be any kind of justice in the current economic system, no matter what we do.
Very deep place to start this conversation. Interesting. I mean, I think I might be wrong about this, but the conversation with plastics has actually progressed, I think, faster than the conversation with fashion. And I think, yeah, it's the same sort of thing about externalizing the costs and onto the people and the environment. And I wonder, like, I don't know, it's just like a really, it might never work, but just a like really random thought when you were talking about this. Like in Germany, you know, there's the fund system with plastic plastic bottles. I wonder if we can come up with something like that with clothes. You know, like if you're going to throw away this, then you pay a premium. But if you maybe never work.
Awesome.
But just
Why
like
not?
I don't know, just thinking out of the box of like how one industry can support another. And yeah, I mean, what you said about like the system change, I guess, is like a much more huge, large-scale thing to think about. But maybe these like smaller changes also will help push in the direction of, environmental protection.
Yeah, also greenwashing. It's another topic which is really important because brands just sell whatever they want right now. I mean, luckily there were some lawsuits going on, and they are thinking about strengthening a greenwashing law, but I think I don't know yet what's the outcome of it, how strong it's going to be, or if it's going to help. But brands are so focused now being green and being social and always picking bits and pieces out of their business structure. So, you know, one company does one good thing. It's like
sustainable.
It's sustainable, and it's maybe 2% of the whole business model. And the rest, the 89%, is fast fashion and creating trash, exploitation, etc. I think a lot needs to be done there too, but unfortunately a lot of people get blinded by it as well, because there's a consciousness right now and an awareness, and we're seeking so badly to do the right thing that we kind of like step into these traps of advertising and marketing, and so it's kind of, again, we had that in the last episode about like questioning things, really education. Also education, but also like really like getting this mindset of not always believing what you're told. It's that's something also we have to kind of consider to kind of societal changes.
Yeah, I think many people should know what they think about, I mean, what they mean by this green washing or blue washing. Right. People should know about it. I mean, all these words is tricky,
right?
And it doesn't give proper information to the people. It is like people are thinking like it is consumers or like whoever it is. They think, oh, they're doing great thing. But you know, if people deep dive, they would be saying that they are in same place. They didn't step up. I mean, step forward to make things better. Yeah.
And actually these like small movements, like some of these bigger fast fashion brands have like their sustainable line, but actually that really actually furthers the amount of unsustainable things that they can do behind this screen of like our sustainable department or whatever.
Yeah, also terminology is kind of like, how do we, what you just said, right? Also, what does it really mean? So if we talk fair, and it's just a word, but whoever uses it in a different way, and there's no definition. So also the definitions are missing. Even with the sustainability reporting of companies, it's not like financial reporting. You have like really good structure, and it's like all what it's really clearly stated what you have to put into your report, but there is no really let's say one standard definition. How should a sustainability report really look like?
But maybe like moving it on a systemic level again, I mean, I think as long as people overconsume, there will be overconsumption. And even, I mean, so I think like I'm often asked, like, can you give us a sustainability tip for like how can you be more sustainable? And I end up saying, the only way I feel like you can be sustainable is figuring out to have a happy life. Because actually what we do is we shop because we feel empty, right? And we feel exploited already, even in our lives, which are very, luxurious in comparison to the producers in the global south. And so I feel like, again, like this kind of, as long as we compensate anything else through consumption, there will be ways of companies being able to, produce so we can overconsume.
Right.
And really getting at the root of, why and also maybe education, like in, you know, it's quite interesting, like in psychology, I heard that now they're talking more about, you know, like how consumption, doesn't matter if it's food or if it's alcohol or if it's clothing or if it's whatever, you know, that how it's linked to your own happiness. And, you know, there's so little research on that, and making it more explicit that...
I would pay that research.
Yeah, you know, yeah, right. Yeah. But, you know, making this link more explicit, like, you know, this is really linked with the way we live, you know. I know so many women and men mostly women who, after a long day of work, go shopping like almost every single day, because they're like, shit, this sucks, you know, I really want to do something good for myself, so I go to, I don't know, like H&M and buy preppy shit, you know. It's so crazy.
But that also sticks to the topic education, which I find also like really important. I just ask myself, as for example, it's our organization finding a solution for this topic, like, how should this education look like? We already doing educational projects, for example, workshops in the unis or at schools, but yeah, we need more numbers, like more people that we could reach, like, and what is the storytelling of this education? As we talked earlier about, like, we don't want to tell just sad stories, like, yeah, so if somebody has an idea on that.
Well, it comes down again to values, right? We had that in our first episode. It's kind of like, is it really, and it comes down to capitalism and how a society thinks, especially here in the global north. Do we need so much stuff, right? And especially, do we need it? That word needing, and you know, I need these new pants, I need this new color sweater or whatever. I mean, of course, it comes from like kind of creating demand from the outside, kind of like the marketing and the advertising. But how do we get there to be stronger? Not to follow them. I mean, why should we follow the companies or the influencers, let's say, because they tell us we need that? Do we really need that? And it really boils down to where are our values? Is it wealth or is it health? Is it family or is it friends? Is it time off? Is it ethical thinking? Is it kind of reconsidering that? And we had that before. Probably we have to start really in kindergarten and going down with kids and it takes too long with kids. So we have to have also grown-up education, of course. But I think also if you turn on the TV, for example, I don't really watch a lot of TV. Sometimes I step through it. I mean, we need more progressive programs, kind of like having their more values too. And I'm not working in TV, but maybe some people can. So this is the question, because this would be, and how do we get everyone on the boat? So we don't, so my experiences as well, that we go a lot into universities and into better like schools, but there are also a lot of people who are a little bit lost, and we don't really consider to go to that school, but we go to that school. And I'm also talking about, I don't know the word in English, but
say it in German.
In German, yes, I'm searching for the word. Brennpunktschule, yeah. You know the English word for that? So because we do, because I taught one time at such schools, and that topic is so far away, but they're all also drawn to like certain brands and certain prestige, because through clothing, gaining that prestige, belonging to a certain grouping, etc. So I think there's so much work to do, and I think getting from the ground up, kind of implementing that, it's tough, but why not?
Also, I think it's super important that people and young people learn the value of clothing again, because we said that earlier. I feel like in other countries where people still learn how to make clothes, how to sew clothes, like our grandmas did back in the day, they have another understanding and value of clothing, and maybe don't throw it away as quickly. And now when there's something ripped, a lot of my friends just throw it away right away because they don't know how to fix it anymore and they don't really understand the craftsmanship behind it. So I think also the whole value of how to make clothing. So also people forget it with fast fashion.
Yeah, we were just talking about maybe everybody has to sit again behind a sewing machine and just maybe make a shirt, you know, count the hours and then think about what is it worth at the end, really, just €5? Think about what you would earn in that time, you know, and kind of and once you have this value system better in place, then you can actually critically think about it and say, well, this is impossible. That's the price, and you know. Yeah,
I think that not everybody needs to do that necessarily.
No,
of course,
it's just extreme. You
I know.
know?
I understand.
I say that
Everyone
has to sew.
No, but I understand like the value that you can get from that. Yeah. But not everybody needs to be like so intimately connected to like tech clothing or textile or whatever. But I think, and I also sometimes feel like this idea of going back to the way your grandmother did it is a little bit of a glorification of the past. and it wasn't always that much nice from the past, you know. We tend to like look at things with a lot of nostalgia. But I think like it's, for me at least personally, it's more interesting to look forward and see that this is what we've learned over the last like generation to generations, especially with how much we pollute and what that could mean to like communities around the world. And I think standing in solidarity with communities around the world is a more like empowered way to look at it, rather than like, oh, now I understand the value of this jumper. I know I keep saying this, but I just feel like people don't have the time to like do this stuff anymore just because of the world we live in and the tempo that we live in. And I think like
that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. But I don't really see that changing. But maybe I'm just like pessimistic, maybe.
Because I mean, I think it's so. I think the link between, to not consider ourselves as part of nature is, I think, one of the main problems in this. You know, why can we pollute? Because we feel like we're not part of nature, but we are, right? I mean, we are made of the same, material as nature is made of. We're part of it. So I think, I think education is, again, it's important, but really, I think it needs to be on an emotional level, make a difference. And so we're missing something in our lives. We're craving something. And I think feeling a connection to each other, but also to nature, is something that can be very healing. And of course, we would have to make time for that. But then again, I think this connection, we can't get it through anything else. I mean, we had this conversation after lunch, how much of our happiness and our value we connect to success and checking off our to-do lists. And I think this is all the same problem. I mean, we have to check out. And we can check out the easiest way if we go into a forest and we sit on the ground and we don't leave before we feel happier and more calm about our lives. They're really small hacks, I think, that can change the way we perceive ourselves and our bodies and nature. And I think this is the only sustainable way we have, because
I think that's also very I totally understand what you mean, and it's like what I try to do in my own life, but I think that there's that also comes with a lot of privilege, that you if you have the time to consider these things, you can. But if you go, Kalpona can tell you more about this also, I guess, in the global south, I feel like people don't have the luxury of time to sit and think about their connection with nature, because it is about.
I think they're a lot more connected to nature, to be honest. I mean, the history, the last 200 years. I think.
If you talk about the workers that you work with, I think it is a.
I think this connection not only there, this connection in here too. Okay, feminist group thinks the feminism is my expertise. I need to focus on that. The water pollution is not my thing. It's not true. The trade union thinks I need to fight for worker rights issues, how to increase the payment and etc. The water pollution, or how this textile industry has been screwed up the ecological system, that's not my thing. No, it is all your thing. Okay, so it is, until we can't connect this puzzle together, we will be not able to educate the people we wanted to educate. All here nice. Everyone have their own point, but I think the education need to be not here. It should be spread in that way and then grow that way. Then only we can fight. When we are thinking educating the students, every level. What if, we do like 100 programs in like 50 university, school and college, and then you will be seeing that one of the biggest singer came down one day in one school and says that, of course, that would be like influencer. One of the brand, brought them, and those kids, brain will be washed again. So we have to think in every single point. And what you were saying that the workers are too connected to, too close to nature. One way it is true, because they are the most vulnerable group, impacted by this pollution, impacted by water shortage, impacted by climate change, everything. So they are close to there, and we are educating. We have missing puzzle too. Like, we are educating workers about, you should know your rights. That is how you're going to fight with factories. But we never taught them that you have to fight with your factories as well regarding this waste management. To tell them not to throw the waste in the wild water, or like in the field, or in the lake. We never taught that, and we have to adopt that. Until we don't adopt that, I think the education piece will be missing in everywhere.
Yeah, it has to be connected, and it has to be in a holistic way to see the whole thing. But this is a really difficult task too, right? To get everything, all dots connected, and get everybody on the same boat. That is the perfect scenario, of course.
No, I think, being here in this part of this roundtable in last 3 episodes, I also learned so many things. When I go back, whatever the trade union agreement we have, I will ask them to put one of the agenda regarding, these, that they will negotiate with their respective factory management about their waste. What are you doing with this? We really need to know, and you have to take care of that. I think somewhere we need to start. And I told last episode that I'm an optimistic person and I love to dream. So, and I'm not the person that will be thinking that I'm going to do that 1 year later. I'm going to do tomorrow. So, now person. So I think this is one thing that I will be really, really, working on. And in Bangladesh, we already started putting feminist, climate, because we believe in climate and labor nexus. So we started, connecting all these dots, the feminism, climate, trade union, all together. So we wanted to see that, what puzzle is missing to address what. Like, we started doing a small research, and we found that out of 15 workers, 15 workers was climate vulnerable. And why did we do that? Because when we were organizing, we found some workers do not want to talk about it. They have some resistance, or they're shy, or they're afraid. Then we dig down, what's wrong with them? And what we found that these people, one day they had land, they had a field, they would grow their own crops, but there was a climate change, so they had to leave their places and come to the city. And when they come down to the city, they ended up their life with a low paid job, and only thing they can think about it is survival. So they don't care that how heat has been increased and putting them in a problem, what city flooding putting them in a problem. The problem they already have been faced, it is nothing to them. So they were like, no, we are in a good place, but you are not. So we are breaking that wall as well in the same time. So I think I just learned so many things in here, and I'm going to work on it.
But it's great how you explain how you work together, right? And I think also this is a problem here. So we have a lot of different entities, and they are working and they're trying to do something, but the thing is also working together. And then the brands are different entities too, and they're not transparent, because if they would be more transparent, maybe there would be even a possibility to say, oh, here could something to be changed. Also that they only have to expose tier 1, tier 2, not even tier 3 suppliers, and don't know the supply chain sometimes. It's kind of like there's all this disconnection. So how to connect all these pieces, because actually the brands have to work with you guys, with the unions, with the activists, then they have to work with the NGOs, but also on this side, and then they have to get the consumers on board, and everybody has to have basically the same understanding in order to fix the whole thing.
Yeah, but I don't think so. It is difficult.
No, I don't think it's difficult, but it's not happening.
It is, then the question is anyone tried?
Yeah.
Okay, like, you have your own label. You're supposed to not run that campaign to get everybody on the board on the supply chain law. It is like somebody would think that it is NGOs work or it is like, the trade union work, but you choose to do that. And I really appreciate that, I'm glad that you did it. So, someone have to stand up, someone have to start from somewhere. Okay, like when I'm going to go back and start talking about this waste management or water pollution, I know some people will be like, are you crazy? We have many things to, address on. But I need to tell them why it is important. I need to tell them that why a women worker who's supposed to sleep till 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., why need to she wake up at 4 o'clock to get the running water, to save those water and for her household work, and so also shower, also drinking water and everything. And it's because, the water has been already used or it has been polluted. And who did it? The textile industry. So how it's not connected? It is connected.
It is connected,
Yeah.
And I think, it's really, and I think we have been taught that it's not connected. Like I think there's a very big discussion also here in Germany about can we afford climate justice and can it be affordable for people? But I think this discourse has been constructed, by politics who want us to believe that it's not connected, but exploitation of nature and people is the same. It's the same root. It's like going beyond the resources that are regenerative, that are sustainable. And I think this disconnect is, you can feel it at every level. So I don't think it's possible to solve one thing, It's really, we see in Italy what happens if you don't address social justice and you only address climate justice. You have very right-wing governments who say climate justice is a hoax because all poor people, are scared that they will not be able to afford anything anymore if they go into a more greener future. So I think really bringing these issues together is the only way that it can work, and otherwise it's going to tear us apart, and this is already happening. So I really like this approach I think we need to do it here a lot more too, like bringing all these movements together and making sure that everybody understands that it's the same cause we're fighting for, exactly the same cause.
Because sometimes they're even fighting against each other. And I just know it from some startups as well. They're very judgmental about the other startup. They're all working green. They're all having the same ideology, but then they're kind of not working together. But they kind of still have this competitive way of thinking. And I think this is also sometimes hindering, and not holding us back to move forward. Because if we're all getting together, we have so much more power, basically, also.
Okay, thank you, guys. I would like to go now to the next point that we could discuss. It was really interesting, so I didn't want to skip it earlier. I think it fits to your petition and the supply chain law about the mandatory government regulations. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about the supply chain law right now, perhaps even in terms of water and what you're planning, whether it's just in Germany or somewhere else too, and stuff like this.
So the environmental aspects of the supply chain law are very basic and very not enough. This was one of the main issues that we also had with the supply chain law, that the only environmental effects that matter are the ones that have a health hazard to the people working, so you have to prove that. And this is really problematic. So we, and if I say we, I mean everybody who worked on the supply chain law and who tried to make it harder, which is even parts of the government. Like the development ministry, for example, tried to make it harder than it now turned out. So there are a lot of loopholes at the moment. I mean, it only is for very big companies. It only is for a very, like basic security level for the people who work in those industries. But there's just right now on the EU level a new law being negotiated, which is of course also the only way it makes sense because we have one market basically. And so we're seeing now again how interests of very big companies are trying to push their governments. So the German government is being pushed by big companies that push basically the FDP, which is one very small party who's in the government, to create loopholes on the EU level. And these loopholes already exist and they want to make them bigger, like a safe harbor solution that will make it a lot harder to say, did they actually miss something, or so sometimes it's just words they're introducing, but it makes it very hard to make them liable. And I think this is one of the main issues with the German law and also with the European law. Like, will companies be made liable? Can somebody who gets hurt in the global south in a factory actually sue? And will they get money from the company? And this is something that they avoided in Germany and that they're now trying again to avoid on the EU level. So you can really well see, and to be honest, I mean, I'm happy that I started Fair by Law, but I'm also, it made me so depressed about our political system, to be honest, to see how forcefully like lobby interests are being included into our political agendas. And so right now, actually not, this is going to be in April, but still, even in April, there will be negotiations about, how good will the law be. And so we are starting a petition again on the EU level to get a lot of voices behind making this strong and making this robust and actually making a difference in terms of, can companies be sued and can they be made liable in a civil lawsuit, which is
But
what
it shows a lot about the companies too, right? I mean, it shows a lot how big they are on ethical issues and their willingness.
Yeah, this is being really struggling with from the global south. I did a hearing in the European Parliament on that last year, and in November negotiation there is I think 2 improvement has happened. One is cost sharing, so that was good one, but we yet couldn't do 2 things specifically. One is including the SMEs, and the other one is access to remedy. So if we don't get access to remedy as a right holder, then there is no point to have this law for us. I mean, it's not going to help us because we need to then come to the European citizen and telling them to sue, and also who's going to pay for that. That's a big issue. So these area, I think, need to be taken care. I'm not sure that are you working with European Citizen Initiative? So I mean, we are working with them along with Clean Clothes campaign. So I mean, keep pressuring. I think one of the solution, and from the global south, I think Pakistani activists from Bangladesh, me and many others, we are pretty much vocal on that. Whenever we talk to any legislator from your part of the world, we talk to them that these are the loopholes, and we really wanted to see that we have access to remedy. Yeah.
I agree. It's really important. And also, as you said, SMEs, like right now it's in Germany, I think only companies from 3,000 on employees, and it'll change, I think, next year to 1,500. But still, I mean, there are so many companies who are a lot smaller than that, and they are totally excluded. And also that it's only tier 1 at the moment, that it doesn't go down. So there's so many ways to move around this law, which is better on the EU level at least. In Germany it's shittier, but it's only tier 1, and we'll see. But so we have to push from both directions.
Totally. And I think more people need to be educated on it. So it is very fewer number of people who know about it. So, our part of the world, we started talking to like union NGOs more and more, and as many as education we can grow up in our level, we can put pressure on this part of the world.
So is a petition like the instrument you would recommend for political pressure, or do you see others that you would prefer perhaps by now, but you already started like the petition?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think in the end it probably has a lot more to do with if there is a public outcry, or like if there is information and if people are like, oh, this is a good solution, why is nobody talking about it? I think the petition in itself would probably have not made a difference if not so many people would have talked about it and written about it and, you know, started pressuring. So I think it has a lot to do with creating awareness in society that there are more instruments than we are made believe, or that we know, you know. I'm not sure. I mean, I think it could have gone also very badly. You know, there are a lot of great petitions and nothing happened.
Yeah.
So
how did you manage to?
I think it was a lot of luck, and then also, a lot of luck and the point in time, you know, where also a lot of NGOs got together. I mean, we talked about this before, a lot of NGOs fighting each other as well. And the initiative Supply Chain in Germany, Lieferketteninitiative, it's over 100 NGOs that all got together and said, you know, we have to do this together, otherwise nothing will move. And so I think there are a lot of kind of lucky things that came together, you know. I would also say a lot of women involved you know, on our sides, you know, a lot of collaboration, less ego, you know, I don't want to make this too much about gender, but, you know, but it was really, and also, it was just, I don't know, it was really lucky. And
which is again an interesting concept for designers also, the whole coming together thing, which you said. Because then me as a startup, I always feel like, oh, I'm not going to make a difference, which we said in the first episode, but it's kind of not true, because everyone can make a difference. And also when you work for a big fashion brand, no one really feels responsible as a designer, because you're always just like, oh, it's, you know, I'm just the person who's supposed to do shakar, so who am I to be responsible for this and this issue? But then no one's responsible, and then that again creates that nothing's going to change. Yeah.
Do you see water as a topic big enough in both laws? Oh.
I mean, the EU level we'll see. It's not true, but
environment is included, but you know, we really need to dig down on that. Yeah.
And make sure it doesn't move.
Bold line it is. Living wage, freedom of association, occupational safety and health in a broader perspectives, gender very narrow, forced labor, child labor, human rights, but climate or like environment is not in detail. But you know, I think it is a time. It's a time to make as detailed as possible.
Is this for all industries, or is it just for the
any industry that you know that their hometown is here?
Yeah,
you're going to be included. I'm just pulling your leg.
Well, if you have 1,500 employees, which I'm not sure, at least for now.
You're working on it, right? I'm going to go home Google.
But it's actually, I mean, it started, like it went into action now, and I met somebody, I can't say from which company, it's a very big, very well-known company in Germany. They don't do clothing, but she said everybody's shitting their pants because of this law. So nobody really knows what will happen now, you know. In Germany, we'll see, you know, like if there will there be a lot of lawsuits, you know, how will NGO react to it? Like how will there be support from northern NGOs, like, you know, to help like people from like groups from the global south to actually start lawsuits and stuff like that. So it will be really interesting to see what will actually happen here.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know what it's going to, you know, bring, because within the trade union we have also different ideas that it will not bring that what we are expecting. But one thing I'm really happy about, because you know, if you see their you know, this apparel industry footprints where they were. They wasn't in Asia, in my country, no. Like 150 years ago, they were in New York City. And they moved in everywhere because they wanted to have cheap clothes, okay? And this law going to make difference on that. So this is the only happiness I have for this moment. Like I don't need to worry that if I put enough pressure onto our government or any brands that you have to give me living wage if you wanted to source from here, then they just will be, you know, they just cannot move their production to other country because that law will be follow them. So this is like only happiness I have at this moment, and then I'll explore more.
One last question about the petition, and like what is your biggest advice or your biggest learning you could give somebody who is starting a petition to
Never trust politicians. Oh, no, just kidding. But yeah, it's really, I mean, there are definitely politicians involved that pushed, but mostly were people who, you know, really felt like they wanted this, like in the ministries, and not necessarily because they were in a party. I'm not sure if that's smart for me to say to never trust politicians, but, you know, it's really, I mean, we're seeing, you know, like the SPD and the Green Party pushed on a German level for a more sound law. And what's happening now, you know, now they're lobbying on the EU level because one like tiny party, which is the FDP, which they are in government with, wants something else, you know. And so we are like, what the fuck? I mean, that was not the deal. You told us that you wanted these things in, and now you're in power and you're doing the exact opposite. So it's really like, there's a lot of like reality checks for me. I mean, it's not that I was a super big fan of, you know, political parties before, but it's really like seeing what actually happens with people if they want to stay in power in regards to their values, you know, and their responsibilities is, to me personally, very shocking. Yeah. Maybe I was naive, but I don't know. So never trust politicians, and get together with as many different groups with different backgrounds, different perspectives, different networks as possible.
Thank you. The next point we had was that we should set up a fund by the brands. They should pay into that we can pay effluent treatment plants for factories, for example, in Bangladesh, because they can't afford to pay them on their own. Like, are there ideas on that? Is there a reality check? Is that possible? Somebody has an idea?
I mean, I think it's totally possible. I don't know if the brands, I mean, I think the brands should pay. It's happened in South India where there are common effluent treatment plants and the government subsidizes them. But I think that is like one really big like check in place for environmental pollution. And I do think that's one really big way forward.
And how could that work?
Just because they got sued and the farmers took the polluters, the manufacturers, to court. I think it was like 20 years ago, or maybe 10, but over 10 years ago for sure. And then it went up to the highest court in India, and then the Supreme Court. And so they directed this like polluter pays law, and then the polluters, which were the manufacturers, had to pay compensation to the farmers whose land was polluted, and also install effluent treatment plants that some of them had privately and some of them continue to have publicly, supported by the government. And I think that's like a wonderful solution, actually. I mean, of course they did pollute, but there was a learning curve, and but now it's only applicable to this one cluster, and actually it should be applicable across the country and wherever they're manufacturing, and it should go back to the brands.
Is this manufacturer from your country or from other country? They were Indian?
The manufacturers? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they export the material abroad mostly.
Yeah, so the brand has been, I mean, those companies has been contributed?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, I'm shaky too, because, you know, it should be contributory, not like depend on the brand fully, because the manufacturers themselves also making profit out of it. So they should not be, you know, getting anything like whatever they want. They have responsibility too. Like in my country, the country law says that, you know, when they have this plant, they should have this EPR, like, you know, treatment in their plant, in their factory, whatever we say. Why not they do that? I mean, they can ask the government to help. For everything, I don't want it to go to the brand. But if you talk to me that living waste, yes, I will purchase them everywhere. But, you know, I think it should be contributory rather than saying that the brand should be paying for all. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, for like safety improvement, we made the brands to pay. Yeah. But when the repair and renovation came out, the manufacturers, they had to pay because that was their job.
But would the brands not have just gone somewhere else if they have to pay living wages in Bangladesh? But
that's why we're talking about due diligence law.
Yeah, exactly. and that would make sense.
I mean, if that law even do not come, but we will make them to sign enforceable brand agreements. So they don't have a choice. And we are not asking for any individual country. We are asking for their supply chain. So wherever they goes to buy, even, you know, they cannot go out of this planet. So we'll change them. Let's see. I mean, if you have, I mean, if they have Elon Musk with them, then different issue.
Yeah, if he enters the textile
Cut it down.
business.
Don't quote this. That crazy man.
There's no platform for him.
No.
Even if we bash him.
Yeah, he's gonna block my Twitter ID.
But to let brands pay into this fund, there must be governmental regulations for it. Or it's again a political process.
I do think so, yeah. But
Otherwise,
I think
they're
you can
never going to
speak-
pay. I feel
Yeah.
like because they're always trying to pay less. So it's like whatever design process you do, it's always like, oh, you need to cut the minutes down in that process because it's too expensive. So they're always trying to save money. So I feel like unless they're being pushed by
That's the
law,
word I wanted to use. Yeah.
yeah, they're not gonna.
Until you pressure
Yeah.
them, they're not going to do that. So that's why we're
100%,
here.
yeah.
That's our job.
And it has to be expensive because they will calculate, how much do we have to pay if we contribute to a fund and how much do we pay to actually make sure that the environment doesn't get wasted. And if that's too low, then they will, So I think really like looking at it both sides and saying, okay, it has to be so painful that actually people don't do it, because in the end, like if it's already, everything is, dead and poisoned, even if you get a lot of money, I mean, what will you do with your piece of land if it's dead, right? So.
And I feel like what I also realized with a lot of fashion brands, what they do now is that they make the packaging sustainable and then from recycled plastic and then say, okay, now
10% recycled plastic.
and then the consumer kind of gets brainwashed again, thinking I just bought a sustainable product, but it's just a packaging. So it's also like, where does it start? Where does it end with the company and the responsibility?
Or the CO2 certificates, right?
Yeah.
But there's no way in the world that the amount of things we consume will be made sustainable. There's no way. And I think to just say that and then say, okay, how can we reduce consumption? I think this is like the way we have to go. Because to be honest, I mean, I know this, like we shouldn't bash other sustainable labels, but I feel like there's also culture in sustainable fashion right now where we are, where we have influencer, where we have labels and they constantly put out new shit. And I'm like, this is not sustainable. Stop selling to people that this is okay because you're buying way too much. And I think so there needs to be some kind of consciousness around the issue that there's no way that we can do this in a sustainable way. Like if we overconsume, it will never be sustainable. So I think, again, there also needs to be a very honest discourse, and it's difficult because, of course, this is how people consume. I mean, we try to do things differently. My label, and it's so hard if we don't constantly want to push people to buy,
Totally.
But,
Totally, yeah.
But it's a discourse we have to have because, it's really the way we consume is the problem. What we consume as well, but also the way we consume. And as long as we don't address this.
We spoke about this in the last episode. Maybe you have another idea of like where this change should start from.
Well, I mean, as I said, just asking yourself a lot more often, am I happy? Am I connected? Helped me a lot. Or like I used to be a consultant and I spent so much money on shopping, and then I changed my job and I actually started to become more happy in what I did and fulfilled. And it means that I'm basically not consuming anymore because I actually feel fulfilled in what I do. So I don't need to consume all the time. What I buy, I need, So really like addressing the level of, and I'm really talking about the global north here because we are the ones who overconsume, right? I mean, it's not the people in Bangladesh or it's not people in the global south that overconsume, that's us.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a growing trend of overconsumption in the global south as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess you guys are a few years ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this point about overconsumption and to regulate this, isn't media playing a big role in this?
Yes.
Like, what could be a role of the media in this discussion?
Yeah, I think this is what we try to do with our channel as well, which is to give the facts, but try to give it in a interesting way because, like, I think we spoke about this in the last episode, that this world is so glamorous that it's so much easier to watch an influencer on Instagram maybe than learn hard facts. So we obviously try to present it in an interesting way that actually, and a solutions-oriented way. And because, yeah, I think that is like, we're also in the age of information where you're blasted from every side with facts and figures and you can't retain so much. So, yeah, we try to just like focus on what you can do, or like this empowering kind of narrative. Yeah, but if you're talking about the larger media, I mean, I totally think like films and social media have such a huge impact on the way we think, and also retail therapy and with Shein that we were talking about. It's just it's like this monster that's heading towards this like state where everyone has just consumed all the resources and like we're heading towards that. And so as a journalism organization, we try to kind of put some like critical thinking in that process, and look for alternatives, and also question this, like, do you really need it? And but also equally not like trying to keep the blame or the burden of the onus on the individual, but also like hold people accountable a little bit more. And I think that balance is the way to, for at least the media to present such topics.
But I still have the feeling that this kind of media is like the David, whatever, and the other one, like this all other media about fashion halls and whatever, is just the Goliath. So how could this ever be?
Yeah, that's the question.
This fight.
That's the question. I think, maybe with more awareness that, and I think it is happening. I mean, you could tell us more about this because you work in the industry, but I think it is happening where the industry itself is getting more conscious about it, and so the messaging that they put out, of course, there's a lot of greenwashing, but maybe that, maybe when there is more awareness, and maybe when we have nothing left, then we'll have to find a way to,
But I think the numbers are still stronger than the awareness. That's the problem, because at the end of the day, especially the designers, they might all be aware, but the money people, they are always, at the end, they have the saying, and the numbers always are stronger than the awareness, because out of sight, out of mind again. If we don't see the issues here, we don't really, I don't think there's an understanding of that issue, and we don't really see it here. So,
So I think there's another, like, and I mean, I've written a book about, like how to do business differently, and from this kind of background, I think talking to a lot of people, young people will make a lot of change, because if they stop working for these shitty companies, and you can already see that a little bit, like they have grown up very differently than other generations, and they are actually more conscious about, who do I want to work for? And if they right now, look for a job, they will ask, what about sustainability, more than I ever thought about.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm hoping that this younger generation will push companies, because otherwise they won't find any employees anymore, And you can already see that in some industries, like nobody wants to work for Shell anymore. Yes. Nobody wants to work for BMW.
Coal mining.
Or like Volkswagen, like even they have problems finding the people, because people are like, this is old school, this is medieval. I don't want to, destruct the planet even more than it's already destructed. So I think there's I think some potential and some hope in that this might be the reason why companies actually have to change something.
Yeah, I think also what you earlier said, and also what you say now, we need to switch. We need to switch the way we're thinking. We are thinking a lot problem-based and less solution-based. And unless we don't also create another way of thinking, and I don't want to start with positive thinking and stuff like that, but solution-based thinking. Because there's this great quote of Einstein I love: you can't solve the problem the same way how you created it. So you have to find new ways to solve the problem. So get rid of that old way of thinking, growing the economy and working like we did before. But we need new business models. We need new models how we can still, why don't we just keep it at the level right now? Like keep the economy like rolling, but think of ways how we implement now social justice, environmental protection. How can we implement it and still thrive, not only healthy, but also still in a good way? And also, I agree, young people might have the mindset even more so, not being in this machinery already, I had students and they were designers and they're like, well, what shall we do? We make again product. And I'm like, yeah, you do. So also like you said, right? So just think about how you make the product. Maybe you do add-on services. Maybe you offer something else. Maybe you think about a way to recycle the process. Talk to your manufacturers, involve them. So don't solve it also alone, but include the people who work with you, and also you can include the factories. You know, it's just like we all try to be on this little island and solve it alone, and we can absolutely include even activists, manufacturers. Don't do it ourselves, but then also think about solutions. So, yeah.
I think it's again an interesting question, like how can we change the way we consume and produce, and I think there are a lot of, like, you know, made by order, for example, you know, you have to pay and then it's produced for you. But I also think that in this discourse it's really important to address one issue, which is also global justice, because a lot of that means that production is being pulled back to Europe. And I mean, we have exploited a very big part of the world for a very long time. So, you know, if we do this, there need to be reparations or some kind of money transfer that needs to be addressed at the same time. Because this is sometimes what I hate about certain discussions in that field, you know, where we're like, oh, we have to do everything local. And I'm like, well, you know, because of our exploitative capitalistic system, a very big part of the world is extremely poor. So now saying, okay, now we go back and now we do everything, you know, ourselves, is like, it doesn't work, you know, it doesn't work. So I think addressing this on a political level through like a discourse around, for example, reparations, you know, which is something that is already pushed by really cool people, but not at a political level where it should be.
Well, it's a form of colonialism all over again, you know.
It is.
So, but that's why I say we have to involve actually all the countries we are already producing just to find a better solution. Yeah.
I would like to ask every one of you, what could be something that you see that could be possible for a small NGO with some capacities, just to have like your opinions about what you think makes most sense. So on the one side, something with a petition or like the supply chain law is one of the opportunities. The other one would be like, should we keep on talking to different people, like more people with these topics? Like we have now this wonderful table with people, but there are more out there. So just to learn more in the beginning. And then the third one is like, should we put more effort into education and also like education in the media through social media, for example, what we talked about. So I would love to hear your opinions about what Drip by Drip could do next.
You can do 3 of them.
What?
You can do 3 of them.
Yeah. Okay, great answer.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily that you will be leading everything, but why not join with that? Like, you know, Human Rights Due Religion Directive, you totally can join and give your voice. An educational program, I think you are running that in the school, and don't stop that. You know, this is the only thing that no one can steal, and you know, people can throw it out if you educate them, and bringing more people on the table. Yeah,
great. Okay, it's hard to say something else now. But you can all say that, and then we know what we do.
I mean, I'm keen on education, but I suggest do podcasts, get it on TV, because I mean there are a lot of people, they're not anymore in the educational system, and you have to reach them as well. And I notice radio podcasts are very popular, and I always say, please bring these stuff on TV, not only these stupid shows and whatever is out there. More facts, more I don't know, you are more of the expert there how you would do that. But it's just like, because this is what people watch, you know, in the evenings, they're sitting on the sofa. I wish there would be more of that.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our channel.
Exactly.
But I would say, I mean, it's something different to what you said. But I think, like, as a reporter, what I find is that there's really a lack of research still, even though we're in 2023 and, like, we've talked about these issues for so long. I feel there's real lack of standards between, like how different organizations or different countries or different companies, like how they set their standards. And under all those standards, there's like kind of quite flaky research. You know, the deeper you go into it, the more you realize like actually they haven't looked at this, or no one's looked at this, so we're calculating on with different assumptions. And I think as a think tank, as an NGO, it's like you're quite well positioned to put people maybe in touch with each other who are already doing work and like strengthen the body of research that exists. Because I think that would be a really good way to bring people together and the conversation like started at a good level.
Thank you.
Easy task.
Nice. Let's get money for it. I think I've never thought about this, but I'm just now realizing it, that you really work at an intersection that doesn't exist so much, which is bringing environmental issues into a discussion that circles a lot around human rights and labor rights. So I think creating these kind of intersections is something that is super valuable, and you can already see this here, right? I mean, going even further and like having environmental activists on board and talking about these things. I think creating a more intersectional discourse around this and intertopic discourse around this, I think could be super valuable, because we're so used to seeing these things separately. And I think, you mentioned it before, like putting it together and actually showing that, there needs to be a lot more collaboration, I think is super valuable.
Yeah, I agree.
I have nothing to add there. I mean, I feel like for me it was a lot of education, and I wish I had that in fashion school. And I think it's definitely important that something like this is taught more in fashion school. So there's a lot of schools out here, and you said with fashion management they already teach that a lot more, which is already a good thing. But for me it was a lot of learning, so I feel very blessed. Now I hopefully build a supplier chain in a good way, but
Great, thank you. Yeah, so we come to an end, and I'm really happy about these roundtables. We talked a lot about women and water and wardrobe, and I have the feeling we had a lot of inspiring ideas how Drip by Drip can go on. So stay tuned what we will do, and thank you all so much. It was just wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having
us. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think